Survivors, seekers, and thrivers, welcome to Transcending Trauma, a spiritual odyssey. I'm Shari Lee Roberts, living proof that transformation is real. Get ready for powerful insights, inspiring stories, and a little laughter along the way.
Welcome, everyone, to today. I have been amazing lately. Heather and Ferri and her story. You will find our conversation today help she took childhood and generational trauma and continue on to develop her innate intuitive abilities and addition to connecting with ancestors to help thousands of people globally. Heather, again, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. And I feel very blessed to be here today with you.
Yes, truly blessing for me and our listeners. Now, you grew up in Pittsburgh. Why don't you tell us about that and the trauma that you endured?
Yeah, well, when we think about my childhood, I think about the 80s. Love the music still to this day. I think about a time when my parents moved to a particular area where there was a lot of land. There wasn't many homes yet, so we lived by a forest. I think about a time when there were no cell phones. I think about a time when computers just were happening in my high school days. And I mention these things because they all shape around my sort of survival or sort of playtime. Because things were happening in the household. You know, mom and dad married young. They were high school sweethearts and they had a lot of generational trauma. This is not uncommon in our society right now. We're just starting to learn about ancestral trauma through the birth canal. We're starting to learn all of this, but simple blue collar family, weekends with the grandparents playing cards. But there were two specific pivotal moments I mention a lot in my talks, and they shape a lot of my development throughout the years in my mission and sort of my work. after doing a lot of my own sort of spiritual psychology work on myself and all the different sciences that I worked with in healing. But one was when I was 7 years old, my father came home Christmas Eve, and he was very distraught. He was very unhappy, confused, sitting at the kitchen table, talking to my mom about how he was being pressured into signing a contract. And because he didn't want to just sign it, he had dyslexia. He wanted to take it home and really review it. He was fired. And, it's one thing to be fired. It's another thing to be fired by your father. He was fired from the family business. And there was a lot of trauma around that I don't know if I'll ever get to the truth of, but it shaped that fear and that insecurity. I took on a lot of my father's emotions. My mother did not respond very well. She reacted quickly by sort of putting him down, which is never a solution. And then the stress of obviously Christmas Day, and there wasn't much of a celebration. I mean, we could fake it, as a lot of people do. And that started a sort of a turmoil in my parents' relationship, a pivotal moment where they were being triggered from their ancestral traumas too, by the way. And this is something back in the 80s nobody talked about. And then the next year, I went through a pretty significant life-threatening experience. In the mornings when my brother would go to school, my father got a new job. My mother would come into my bedroom while I was brushing my hair and getting ready, and she would take the brush and start brushing my hair. And then she would throw the brush down, grab my head, and start to choke me to death, screaming horrific things. And this is not something that's easy to say. So if you're listening and it's triggering to you right now, I'd say take a deep breath. I want to make sure my listeners stay calm. And also if it stirs up anything for you, get that journal out and start writing as you're listening to us. We're both energy healers, and it's important, but that started that, when you're a trauma expert, as I call myself, I worked privately for many, many years. You can go through an experience once and there's a certain amount to heal that. But when it's chronic, when it happens on a regular basis, then you've got some serious rewiring to do. And that was my case. So there's a lot of brain damage. And obviously I didn't speak in my household for pretty much 18 years of my life. So I started out stuttering and having some vocal issues in my 20s. And then I actually, I will say my first sort of well, I'll stop there. Now I want to get your feedback. That was a lot.
Okay. Now, when your mother came in and did that, was there any inkling prior to that, or was that everything appeared to be normal or good, and then she snapped and came in, and that was the beginning of her doing that regularly.
That was a great question. And I'm glad I paused. So glad. Actually, that question was asked to me about, I don't know if it was 12, 14 years ago when I had a lawyer as a client briefly. And I was writing my first book that's now off the shelf. He asked me that question. So that's a brilliant question. So what happened so before age 8, my mom would definitely yell at my dad. So that was she was unhappy from pretty early on in the marriage. So I can remember 3, 4 years old in the other house, her yelling at him, I want a divorce. So she was always I think having some sort of narcissistic, some personality disorder, it always stemmed. But it was these pivotal moments that affected the money, it affected the livelihood, the stress levels get higher, they're more extreme traumas that really pivot her. I don't know what made her snap. That's a good question. I'll never know that. That's in her sort of psyche and DNA, but there was something that made her switch a knob. You think of these like our brain as a computer chip. I do know now after a lot of work, and this comes out in my book series coming out soon. I do know that when that switched, part of those programs are from her past lives. Okay. And that has to deal with her soul database, not mine. Okay. So for me, it was shocking. There was no warning. I didn't do anything bad. I didn't I was a really sweet, pure child. I was a really good girl. And from that point on, I tried to be as perfect could be. But part of that involved dancing, and it involved not speaking. Unless, and really not speaking, because she was very much after that, much more of a slave. I describe it as slave and slave owner because that deals with a lot with my soul database, but like a slave owner, I'm property, I'm your possession, which parents can have subtle details of this in their wiring. It doesn't have to be the extreme of my life. When working with family systems and communication and doing brain protocols, people rewire the way they communicate, their tone of voice, so it's an interesting thing. But yeah, there was and so it was a complete, utter shock to the system. Then, as a child, you go to school, you think you did something wrong. You think, okay, maybe if I do something else, mom will not behave that way anymore. And then when it happens again, and then it happens again, it's disassociation at that point. I'm living in another fantasy world, and I'm just trying to stay alive.
Yeah. Dad, your dad ever know it was happening or were you and your I apologize. 1 second. Oh my God. Dear, that I need one hours. No, this was going on. Now, for me, my father was the abusive one, and we all took beatings, choking, smash, kicks, all of that. So it was no secret in my family what was happening.
Yeah. Nobody knew, but that's sort of the shocking mystery when you go on my website, Heather Ann Ferri, because years later, when I started to pull up pictures, there weren't many pictures with me and my parents. It was always with me and my brother and me and my grandparents, because we spent a lot of time with my grandparents on the weekends. The two pictures that I utilize on my website, I think are pretty clear that there's something wrong with this kid. I go from a very happy-go-lucky kid to a kid that's in deer lights. You can see the shock. And then, so the first picture I have is kind of like the beginning stages. And then the second picture, ironically, I'm in a confirmation religious outfit, and I look like I have a massive stroke. Like, I really look like I have a massive stroke. So not only did the doctors, nobody recognized that, and I didn't talk at that point. I couldn't move my head at times for a week. My father was out to lunch. My brother was also out to lunch because in my view, and he doesn't remember a lot of childhood because he had actually two car accidents, major car accidents before the age of 20. And he came out of it okay, but I don't think he came out of it, I think it did affect his
Yeah.
frontal cortex and his memory. And
Okay.
also, you just want to create a happy-go-lucky family system. That's how children
Yeah.
survive. You don't
Yeah.
want to face the reality that this happened. So no, here's this little girl. She's
Oh
being
my
tortured
God.
behind scenes, and then everybody's pretending. I think that a lot of people tiptoed around my mother's energy and her dialect. I don't think she was from what I've got later in years, the nicest person in the world back then. I think there was an air about her. Um, I think, unfortunately, because there weren't enough family members calling her out or asking questions when I did come out 11 years ago, she became worse. And that's also my message. When we support predatory behavior, which we have as
Yeah.
society, we've actually
Mm-hmm.
really funded it in America, then it becomes worse. It becomes more egotistical. It becomes a monster. And that's actually
Yeah.
what they did. And I learned that, and this goes through my book series. When you get to book 3, you really see how, as I'm doing all this healing work as the victim, I'm losing money. I'm taking off work from my business. I'm rewiring my brain 4 hours a night and drinking medical grade water. And I mean, this is a full-time job when you do something like this to somebody.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then they're not doing it. And they're not
Yeah.
doing a fundraiser for me. My family's never done a fundraiser for me when I've lost, all my savings
No.
over and over again.
Yeah.
There's a denial that's so deep in a lot of
Yeah.
systems, and it's
Yeah.
systematically in, I think, a lot of things. It's in medicine, religion, it's in a lot of stuff right now.
Oh.
And so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you feel alone, and I'm that
Yeah.
person. My programs, my books, my message is like, luckily there's like a luck to this, that I have a DNA soul database of a healer, and came into a lot of these ancient sciences and had the discipline, because you got to have discipline to show
No.
up and do the
Yeah.
work and shake trauma and feel it out. That pain is not fun. And right, I
No.
wasn't out
Mm-mm.
partying. I wasn't out doing drugs to ignore it. I wasn't out drinking
Yeah.
all night. I wasn't out having
No.
sex all night. There's no
Yeah.
judgment to people who do that. I'm not judging it.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I'm just saying I was disciplined, and I give myself credit for that now.
Oh.
And I earned the
Yeah.
title of healer. I didn't just like one day decide I'm going to call myself a healer. I earned it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think we have to have
Oh,
like
yeah.
some sort of understanding of what that means in America, specifically when we're
Mhm.
funding so much medical science all the time. So I'm getting off on a tangent there, but no. So I lived, I was scared. I was scared of her, obviously. I
Oh,
actually
yeah.
denied that until my 30s. When I was in my
Yeah.
30s and I moved back to Pittsburgh, and that was a spiritual decision. I decided to leave show business, even though I was doing well, but I was starting to work on my inner self. And there was this voice of like, you've got to go back and face what you
Oh,
ran away from, right?
yeah. Yeah.
So I could have gone down the road of more Broadway shows and still been extremely broken inside, had cancers growing in my body and failed relationships, or take the road less traveled, the one uncomfortable, and go
Yeah.
back to my roots, Pittsburgh, and start to figure out what to do. And when I went back to, I'm not sure where I was going with this. I had a point with this I lost the point. Sorry about that.
No, don't be it'll come back and then just
Okay.
go. Oh, well, were you when you left Pittsburgh or at least moved out. And I am assuming your mother continued the beatings until either you moved out or were old enough and strong enough to tell her no more.
So that's a great question. The chokings stopped about 9 years old, and I don't know why she stopped. I do know that I looked like I was sick after that. I was over medicated for sinus infections, throat infections from age 10 to 16, let's say. I would lose my voice. I would have major swollen throats. So there was
Wow.
no recognition of addressing her. I was scared to death of her. This is a woman that almost took my life repeatedly.
Yeah.
She, to me, in my eyes, was the dictator. And so you do as you say, or there's consequences. So I was deathly on every scale of my cell. Oh, I know what I wanted to say now. What happened is when I came back to Pittsburgh and I had some amnesia coming out of it because you go through amnesia and when you start to suppress it.
Yeah.
I was in the parking lot of a grocery store and I see her come out. And I haven't even acknowledged the abuse. I'm pretending I'm in the show now of my family. Everything's okay.
Yeah.
Like, that's the show.
Yeah.
So I haven't even come out yet. And my first instinct without a thought is I ducked and hid. I didn't even want my mother to see me.
Yeah.
If that is not telling of how much fear I had over her, or she had over, people don't get this stuff, and my family sure doesn't get it. So that was before I even came out with my family, and then they outcasted me, which is a whole thing. But so what happened is I was training to be in show business because partly she loved dance and she wanted me to be famous so she could be, look at my daughter, look at me. So I was always in the newspaper. Look at her. She's got all these awards. Aren't I a great mom? I give her all these dance lessons. Aren't I a great mom? I had that type of thing. Luckily, I love creative arts and I'm going back into it, but I wasn't using it in the right. I was using it as more of a survival tool. I got a partial scholarship to Point Park University, which was still in Pittsburgh. And I worked many jobs to pay the rest of it, my college education. My mom was tricky. We had a checkbook that was still in both of our names, and she would sometimes take a little bit of my money out. So there was still this control thing of I've got something over you. So I started to save cash. And I wanted, I had a suitcase and some cash. And as soon as I got my degree, I went to New York City and I thought I would never come back. I actually made a vow I'll never come back to Pittsburgh. But like I said, after a decade of show business, even though I was doing really well and finding my identity, I was having a lot of serious sicknesses. And there was no escaping what happened. So there was, as I was studying Kundalini yoga, doing medical meditations, and I had a situation with my father. You had asked before, my father, she screamed at him every day, all day, which is a form of breaking down the inner ear. So you can't hear, you start to lose your senses. She definitely was physical abusive to my brother in front of me at the kitchen table at dinner time. And there's moments of my PTSD when I was healing it. I saw visuals of her physically abusing. So there was a lot of, she was a very beautiful woman actually, but extremely masculine, rageful, domineering figure that would shock people. It'd be like, how could this woman, but it was really shocking. And so I think all three of us endured a lot of damage, but I can't speak for them. My father did not help me a lot throughout my life, but he did, and this is thread throughout my books, introduce the healing tools, which is kind of interesting. He would introduce the healing tool and then abandon me, and then introduce the healing tool and abandon me. So I go through this journey in my books to talk about like sort of soul contracts we have and with me and my father. It's kind of deep and I'm not going to, but you got to read the series. Book 2 and book 3 will really.
Okay, but can you get about staying example of one of the two
Mhm.
worlds that he gave you, and if you would share how your dad came about knowing this, or
Yeah.
being them. This is really interesting, and it resonates in that my dad is a mentioned was the abuser. Yeah, he was also the man who would cry at a Hallmark movie was sensitive, and I was the one they taught all of us to hug, to show and tell people who mean something to you, to express it. So, even though my dad was a complete nut job, he is the reason I am affectionate, loving, and I have no problem telling people I love them. So they are why your dad doing that for you ring with me.
Well, I really appreciate you breaking that down. Good questions and good information. So we have a soul that's separate from the physical body.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we don't understand and study that enough.
Yeah.
So the first thing is I'm gonna kind of go, I'm gonna answer it, but give me a moment. I'm gonna go around it and then so my father dies in 2022 and his 44 days of sickness, I talk about in book 2, it reveals a lot. It upgrades me in a lot of ways too. And what happened is I started to hear his voice very clearly when he started to go to the other side, and then he started to be present in my home. And he told me to take my first book, which was published years ago, off the shelf. And I did listen to him because I wasn't promoting it anymore, because half of the things that was in the first book, those tools, I would not recommend now. Becoming a trauma expert, it means 15 hours a day of being in the trauma field, working with clients, working with myself. This didn't happen overnight. And as much as I love certain sciences, I would not recommend them in a certain, like if I had my dream blueprint of a trauma center, I wouldn't recommend certain things now. So part of that,
Yeah.
and also part of my psychology was changing as I kept upgrading and healing. So I never
Yeah.
stopped, which is a really important thing for our caregivers and healers out there. They tend to be overworked and underpaid.
Yeah.
So one of the things he said is, so I took it off the shelf. I started to go through a lot of healings with him on the other side, getting rid of some of my toolkit, adding some of my toolkit, changing up some of my toolkit. And in the book that's going to come out later this month, at the end of the month, we wrote together. Okay. But I'm a healed child now.
Yeah.
And I'm working on healing all the ancestral child. And we had a mission because I know all my past lives and well, I know a lot of them and his. So part of our past life agreement in India was to do certain things in regards to child trafficking, child abuse, sexual abuse, law, big things.
Yeah.
So that's a tool coming out soon. And what I like about it is he didn't want me to just write my stories. He wanted a manual after each chapter of spiritual questions that most therapists don't even think about, and medical meditations that started me out. So you go back to your original question. The first thing that happened is I was starting to hear about yoga before it was popular in New York City. And I was going to yoga classes, but they were very physical oriented. I had been a professional dancer, studied modern, best dancers in the world, jazz, tap dancing, Alexander technique, so the physical stuff, I was like, I have a monkey mind here. I have brain damage. Literally, the hard wire is not functioning well. And also there was an air about it back then, kind of like, I got my yoga mat, aren't I cool type thing. I'm a blue collar person. I'm a pretty practical, down to earth person.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of turned off by some yoga classes. And when I went to visit my dad, he had hurt his rotary cuff during construction. And his physical therapist at the time, and this was back, when nobody heard the word Kundalini yoga in my city. There was nobody.
Yeah.
He was studying it, and he wanted to do the diabetic sets for free. He wanted to use my dad as a guinea pig for 6 months. That was the best health that year he'd ever been in. But he was a blue collar. We're in a city that didn't condone that. So he shared with me the first meditation privately in the office. And he really didn't tell the family. My mom didn't do it with him. He was doing it privately. And it was a little bit of an upgrade. But that's when I went back to New York and started studying Kundalini yoga, which then led me on the path of the brain protocols. And the brain protocols for ADHD, childhood abuse, PTSD, is what they have PubMed, but they haven't been utilized much in the United States. And I've changed them a lot throughout the years of actually having experience of working with clients. So he set the tone on that. We never really meditated together. And then the first healing tool was I'm 7, right before the 7-year-old, hearing him being fired, my dad would come home in the kitchen and complain about the chemicals in the water pipes because he was working on the water pipes. So that introduced what's in our water. Why isn't anybody addressing that? So there were all these subtle things. Now, for the average another person in this household may not have picked up on these things. My brother didn't pick up on these things. So why did my brother get a different soul map than me? Because we're different souls.
Yeah.
And we have different maps and we have so there's different missions. There's different things to unravel. That's why no two fingerprints are alike. And that's why the toolkit has to require you to go within and do work and have a guide, but somebody can't tell you your life story. Somebody can't heal the trauma out of your pain. I mean, there are miracle healings, yes. So there are things that happen miraculously. And I think that comes with good karma, bad karma. What is the teaching tool of that moment? What is that, because I have actually put my hands on people and have them heal different things.
Yeah.
So, and that's not something I
Yeah.
publicized. It's something that I
No.
was kind of like, oh, like I channel Mr. Rogers now after my father passed away. He helped me with my inner child a lot. I learned a lot in recent years reading books that, he actually did a lot of miracle healings, with children in hospitals that nobody publicized about. Like he wasn't like
Yeah.
on the news going, "Oh, today Mr. Rogers visited so and so and now they can speak." He didn't
Yeah.
publicize it. Because he was really protected by good men. He had three really good men who financially backed him. And so he didn't
Mm-hmm.
have to, yeah, I think that really played a huge role in him not having to sell out. I don't think he would have
Yeah.
sold out, but he didn't have to sell out. And he wasn't
Yeah.
going to change who he was because this famous or this popular television show was like, come to us. He was like, no, I know what I want to do with children. I know who I am. And
Yeah.
so, luckily he was able to reject a lot of things because he had three men who financially gave him always the backing.
Yeah, I'm sure what it was said up damn. What? Parliament? Det är det EU begrejen tjänar länge hem. And det gör sig hem out. Or det connect with EU. How
That's
did they
that's a great
are?
question. So I believe Mr. Rogers seeked me out.
Okay.
And I think it started a long time before I knew I was channeling him or he made it very clear. Um, it was, when I talk about the first question you asked that this lawyer asked me, I remember that lawyer coming into our private session saying, "Hey, I've got a Mr. Rogers sweater on today." Well, I didn't watch Mr. Rogers and I didn't know much about him. We would have benefited. So he initiated Mr. Rogers in me, my psyche. And I remember as I was doing children's programs back then, which I loved. I have a gift with children because they don't have they see the light.
Yeah.
They can be real with me, like real.
Yeah.
They're not putting
Yeah.
on them, they take off the masks. I can see
Yes.
sometimes they walk out the classroom and the masks come on because mom and dad,
Yeah.
I'm fortunate,
Yeah.
but it is so I have a gift with children. And obviously my theme is healing your inner child. I've gone through a long journey to get there.
Yeah.
But so I started to study him back then, and I wanted to actually have a children's television show. And but I wanted children to be my assistants, to them be the teachers, because I kept
Yeah.
seeing how they are the teachers until we block them.
Yeah.
And I started studying all kinds of Mr. Rogers stuff. And then that got cut off real harsh because I went through 6 years of working with a lot of predators from my bloodline, which I did not know was my bloodline. That was an assignment. So I'm sitting across from people that are, have a lot of evil in them, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
and to understand the yin and the yang. And then my father dies, and honestly, there starts to be a lot of angels coming in. So I channel a lot of angels. And I have them in
Yes.
my books and I name them. I have an angel called Angel Gangster, and he's not from my bloodline, but he has a very specific job, and I'm really grateful for him, but he's cleaning up karma because he messed up a lot. And, he left his kids behind, from his actions. But with Mr. Rogers, one thing that Mr. Rogers makes clear in my house is electricity. He can control my lights. He can control the computer. So if he does not want me on a station, he will shut the station off or move the cursor. And he was very extreme in the beginning when I was still working out traumas and getting rid of a lot of people in my life. after my dad died. But and he rings the doorbell. It's all signaling. That's how so I always say when I do an event, you never know if he shows up, he may turn off the lights. Then we may have a show of lights.
What year did he come in over? I mean, he came in big forward. You knew it was him. So about what year was it?
2022 is when I knew Mr. Rogers was coming in. And I think at this moment, 3 years, because there's been a lot of healing, a lot of loss, a lot of upgrades. I think he wants to carry on an assignment. I think I'm supposed to help with an assignment with healing inner child and stuff. So I think that he can see where we're missing right now in society with our children. And he can see my work as a trauma expert. And so I think there's an assignment, a facilitating of a project. So I think that's why he's had maybe his eye on me. I don't know. Maybe that was a contract we had before I came in. I don't know. I'm honored. He did a lot of work with my inner child. I'll show you, it's sitting on my table here, but like, I don't have a lot of photos, but getting photos of me as a little baby and as a child and talking to her and doing a lot of that type of work because, I didn't really have anybody to talk to all those years, and that isolation, that's devastating, and I'm really good in the private room, in the classroom with everybody else, but I neglected myself. And when my dad died and, these angels start coming in, they're like, it's not okay. We need to take care of you. We need to upgrade you. You are very important in society. Even if the people in your community don't treat you well or don't see it, we are not dismissing you the way they have dismissed you. And so my angels are real. And, we fluff that over with children. Children are mystical, magical beings until we fluff it over. Mr. Rogers was fluffed over with his puppets, but I actually convinced that his puppets were probably angels too, that he was talking to. And you know what I mean? Now I look back, there was a stereotype of patterns, but so I love him. I love all my angels. They're very specific with very specific assignments and very specific in enriching my life. Because I've had a hard life, actually. I don't wear it because I take good care of myself now, and I look a lot healthier because I'm very disciplined, but I've had a very, very hard life.
Take us back to when your inner child finally came out. Where were you? What were you doing? And when did it happen and how?
You have magical questions going on here. I think Mr. Rogers is helping you today. These are good questions.
I do want to tell you. He is in your home, wherever you are. He is behind you. So, he probably is along with your other angels definitely guiding me.
That's beautifully said. Beautifully said. I think that the inner child started to come out in the later 2022, and then 23, 24, and now it's really strong in 25, but it came out in my home, and it came out through dancing and singing with no one who was watching. And now I would say, so I've written songs that I haven't shared yet. I put on shows with my angels. So I talk to them, and I have so much fun, and I get really, really high and blissful. Recently, in the last couple months, I've been going to different playgrounds to play, because when I was on the playground as a child, even though I might have been playing and running around, I couldn't organically feel joy inside because there was so much pain inside.
Yeah.
So I've been playing and running around on the playground. When no one's around, I'll put on a song that uplifts me and dance around and sing. And really the joy is organically inside of me. And I was just thinking the other day, like, wow, this is who I would have been in an environment that was safe and loving. And the possibilities of what our society would be if our children were in safe, loving environments. If mom and dad came together after healing trauma, right? After the healing trauma and came into union, we wouldn't keep passing the generational stuff. And I would say, like, I was a sugar addict for years, which sugar got me high, but it was a fake high, right? So we use addictions we want to feel good.
Yeah.
We want to feel happy. And I was the happy. Everyone thought everything was great. I was a great actress, but I wasn't happy. This type of joy is different. My body inside is more flexible and it moves different than it did even 2 years ago. But I had to work through a lot of pain. I had to work through pain. And I think that's Mr. Rogers' message is we can't deny pain when you hurt somebody. That's why there needs to be very serious consequences to predators.
Yeah.
And that's a big message that I just want to keep reinforcing. Instead of focusing on victimhood mentality, which some people have, but most victims I've worked with, they blame themselves and they're hard on themselves and they work really hard. Brain rewiring, they spend their life savings on water filtration. They're not the ones that we should be ridiculing all the time. We should be really questioning why we're letting rapists keep raping, why we keep allowing, whether it's in your family or your church. You know, there has to come a point where
okay, tell me at the moment your beautiful child first appeared, and what was she wearing?
So I think I get the question right. Like when my first, like the healed part of my inner child, when the healed inner child appeared, that's not like it was an outside experience. She's actually inside me. So it's not like I see it's visual, but my clothes are changing. The different types of colors I like to wear now and the different types of fabrics. I like soft things on my body. But what I will say is she is very pure-hearted and loving. And so I have to protect her. That's my job now until I can find other people that respect, because we live in a world where when you're kind and you're hearted, it tends to attract darkness. It tends to attract people who want to take. So the one thing my father And some other particular angels have been teaching is boundaries and protection all day long.
Yeah.
Boundaries and protection. Boundaries and protection.
Yeah. They are fundamental like just at jeg vet about my inner child coming out. It was 20 21 over to I was living in Florida and had reconnected with a guy who I had gone to high school with. We were studying over a couple of day period. Each conversation, I found myself lighter, and a part of me that they had been long gone coming back. My sense of humor. We just that child innocence kind of. We over those days had a wonderful time taking the journey down memory lane. Then one day he texts and really minds me of a situation as they took place way back in high school. Well, the man has a gift for telling a story. I was a double over at the edge of the bed, laughing the deep, deep belly laugh. Crying, I couldn't even see my phone screen. I said her laughing so hard I couldn't breathe. And for a moment, I'm like, and right then, my darling 5-year-old inner child comes dancing across my mind's eye, laughing and dancing, throwing her arms up, hugging herself. I took a deep breath and just like grabbed onto her, hugged her, and told her, darling, it's been far too long. No more. You're back. You're here to say. So That is at the moment you serve or bell, yeah, they are moment in our healing journey. Amazing. Wow. We are an hour. We could go on and on and on. In closing, what words would you like to impart on people who resonate with your story and want to heal, but just it feels insurmountable to even take the first step. What would you like them to know?
Well, that they're not alone.
Yes.
You know, when I was 26 years old, I had a near death experience before that. Had to go back to Pittsburgh for a moment. I saw a flyer of a shiatsu massage therapist on Broadway Dance Center, built, thousands of pictures and long stories. I took the flyer, made an appointment, canceled it, made an appointment, canceled it, made an appointment, canceled it. Why did I do that? Well, my heart and soul knew that I needed something different, that I needed a loving touch. I didn't even know what shiatsu was at the time. It's a very different type of massage, but
Yeah.
I kept canceling because the negative mind of my mom's imprint was still in my wiring.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be the situation with people listening today. So you're not alone on that. But what I would say is my journey, if you go on my website or you begin, there's different sciences, and sometimes one science people are more drawn to at first, and
Yeah.
that's a great way. You want to find something that can get you inside yourself, inside the game, but it is about inside. And so if you leave here today, it's shutting off that cell phone for another hour. It's sitting under a tree in silence, and you may say, well, that's really uncomfortable. And trust me, I've been there. It's really uncomfortable. Try 5 minutes a day. Try to connect with nature and stuff. So you start these baby steps, and then eventually, slowly, it didn't happen overnight for me. It did not. It is a lifestyle, soul style change for eternity, because I'm taking my soul with the healings. So every little step matters to you more than anyone else, to you. And it's a testimony, and every time you're abusive to yourself or you knock yourself down, I've been there 100 times. Just get back up. Just get back up, have grace for yourself. It starts with having grace for yourself, loving, I didn't love myself for a long time. So that took healing, that took releasing the dark sins of the predator's actions towards me, right? I had to do the work to release that in order. So you stepping in the game of healing is the action of loving yourself. Even if it's messy and you feel like crap, you're still in it. And so, those are some of the messages that I send. I send you blessings and love. Love energy is what you were saying today, and something that you have. And I feel that. That's why I felt so comfortable in sharing what I shared today. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. And I would like to dovetail on what you said. I am a firm believer in if you are truly committed to healing, call someone, call Heather, call me, call anyone that speaks to what you need to get started. It is almost a guarantee of success
Mhm.
when you are able to you need a body. That constant reinforcement and encouragement. There is no shame in admitting you need a loving partner in life. They will take us back to your opening comments. And it could have been being forward. We began recording. You spoke to having to invite the masculine energy for so long that when you realize you need to let it go and allow the feminine energy in that is when real change happens. And I have found with myself, with you, and millions of other highly successful women who have endured trauma. We is part of a way of surviving. I have taken on a masculine role and energy to protect ourselves. So, with that, reach out to someone whoever that they don't know. Talk with her again. Talk with me. If we are not the right right now, we know people who know people will connect you with however that is. I think I still big for Heather and I am myself when I say it's for us. It's not about adding another client to our schedule. It's not about the money. It is about helping whoever is serious about healing to deal with their still. That is what our souls are here to do. Help others heal. Heather and you be beautiful, so love you. And I mean that. Love your energy, your story, all of you, and thank you for being a beautiful healing light in this terrifying world. And thank you for your time and coming on today.
You're welcome. Beautifully said. I don't think I need to say anything else. I think you have led the audience through a journey today, and I thank you for being a part of that journey.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Transcending Trauma, the Spiritual Odyssey. If you're working to overcome trauma and would like to work with me or be a guest on my show, contact me through my website at shariroberts.org. Please hit the follow button to make sure you don't miss any episodes. I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn at Shari Roberts. You can find all the links in the show notes. I'd love to hear from you. I'm Shari Roberts, your host, reminding you that you're never alone. Until next time, sending you love and light.